Alright, I spent way more time Elden Ring than I ever admit out loud, and after replaying it more times than I can count, I think I'm finally settled how I'd rank every major location in the game. Some of those were easy choices, a few of them weren't, and there's definitely one area that I think gets way less credit than it deserves, so let's get into it. I feel bad putting Deeproot this low, because visually it's one of the coolest places in the entire game. The music is beautiful, the atmosphere is incredible, and the idea behind it is honestly fantastic. Finding this massive network of roots hidden underneath the lands between feels like uncovering something you were never supposed to see. The problem is that once you get over that initial feeling, there isn't just much here. Most of the time is spent wandering across giant roots that all start looking the same, finding the same few enemies, and trying to figure out whether you're actually making progress or just taking another loop around the map. Unless you're specifically doing Fia's questline, it's surprisingly easy to spend 20 minutes exploring and come away feeling like you barely found anything worthwhile. It's one of those locations where the concept is honestly better than the gameplay. I still love how it looks, but every time I play Elden Ring, this is one of the few places that feels more like an obligation than somewhere I'm excited to revisit. This is basically where I put most of the underground dungeons that are in Noxtella. 1 or 2 catacombs are fun, 5 are still pretty good, but by the time you've cleared 10 or 15 of them, they'll all start blending together. You're pulling another level, dodging another set of imp traps, fighting another brutal watchdog or L3 burial spirit, and before long it feels like you're running through different versions of the exact same dungeon. I don't even think they're bad, which is the frustrating part. The first time you discover one is exciting because you have no idea what you're walking into. The problem is that Elden Ring is so massive that From Software had to reuse a lot of ideas. And these dungeons are where you notice it the most. There are definitely exceptions, and we'll get to one of them later, but as a whole, this is probably the least memorable part of the game. When I think back on Elden Ring, these aren't the places I remember, they're just the places I happened to clear along the way. I understand what this area is trying to do. By the time you reach the Mountaintops, you're getting close to the end of the game, and the world is supposed to feel cold, empty, and almost abandoned. From a storytelling perspective, it absolutely works. You really get the sense that you're walking through the remains of a dying civilization. The problem is that actually playing through it can feel like a bit of a slog. There are long stretches where you're just riding torrent across empty snow, waiting for the next interesting thing to happen. The giant enemies are impressive the first time you see them, but they're spread so far apart that most of the journey feels quieter than it probably should. It's not a terrible area by any means. I just think people remember it more because of what happens at the Forge of the Giants than because they generally enjoy explaining the region itself. I feel pretty similarly about the Consecrated Snowfield. The invisible path puzzle is a cool idea the first time you figure it out, and I like that From Software hid an entire late game area behind a secret, but once you've solved the mystery, there really isn't much left that makes me want to come back. For a place that's meant to feel like a hidden reward, it ends up feeling surprisingly empty. It has a few memorable moments, but not enough to justify how much space it takes up. I honestly think Limgrave is one of the best opening areas ever made. It teaches you almost everything you need to know about Elden Ring without ever stopping to explain it. Within the first hour, you've probably wandered into enemies that completely destroy you, found a cave you weren't expecting, stumbled across an NPC hidden in the woods, and realized that the game is constantly rewarding curiosity. It's an incredible introduction to the world. The only reason I can't put it higher is because, after a few playthroughs, it becomes the area you're trying to get through, rather than the one you're looking forward to exploring again. That's not really a criticism though. An opening area has one job: make you want to keep playing. Limgrave does that about as well as any game I ever played. Altus Plateau is kind of a weird one, because I like almost everything that's connected to it, more than the region itself. Walking through Leyndell for the first time is an amazing moment, and seeing the air tree towering over everything never really gets old. There are some great bosses nearby, and visually it's a nice change after Liurnia, but whenever I think about Altus, I mostly remember it as the place between other, more memorable locations. Liurnia has the sense of mystery that makes you want to explore every corner, and Caelid immediately tells you something is horribly wrong the second you arrive. Altus doesn't really have that same identity. It's a good region, but it never quite stands out the way the others do. Liurnia is where Elden Ring really clicked for me. Limgrave teaches you how the game works. but Liurnia is where you start trusting your own curiosity. Instead of chasing the next objective that looks interesting and see where it takes you, more often than not, you end up finding something worth your time, whether it's a hidden cave, a ruined church, an NPC you completely missed before, or an entire section of the map you didn't even know existed. The academy sitting in the middle of the lake is also one of my favorite landmarks in the game. You can see it from almost anywhere in the region, so even while you're wandering around, you always have the giant castle in the distance reminding you where the main story is waiting. The only thing holding Liurnia back from S tier is that it can drag a little in the middle. Crossing the flooded parts of the lake over and over isn't really as interesting as exploring everything around it, and I think the area could have been a bit tighter without losing what makes it special. Even with that, it's still one of the best exploration focused regions From Software has ever made. Caelid is almost the complete opposite. It's not relaxing to explore, it's not inviting. The entire region feels like it's trying to convince you to turn around and leave, and somehow that's exactly why it works. The first time I accidentally wandered into Caelid, I genuinely thought I'd gone somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. The sky turns a horrible shade of red, the ground looks like it's rotting beneath your feet, giant dogs and birds start chasing you, and even the ambient sound makes the whole place feel unsettling. It's one of the few areas where the environment itself feels like the enemy. Everything about Caelid tells the story of what Scholar Rod did to this land without needing long cutscenes or pages of dialogue. You don't need someone to explain that something catastrophic happened here, because the world already does it to you. But first visit is one of the most memorable moments in the entire game, and is the main reason Caelid lands comfortably in A tier for me. If someone asked me what the best design area in Elden Ring is, I'd probably say Stormveil without thinking twice. Every time I replay the game, I notice another shortcut or another path that I somehow missed before. The castle constantly loops back on itself, and instead of feeling confusing, it makes the whole place feel believable. You're always unlocking doors that connect to somewhere familiar, exploring areas you'll eventually reach, or finding little side rooms with rewards that make exploration feel worthwhile. It never feels like the game's wasting your time. Every hallway, rooftop, and hidden passage feels like it was placed there for a reason. And that's honestly impressive, considering how massive the castle is. Even after multiple playthroughs, Stormveil is still one of the few locations where I slow down instead of sprinting to the boss. That's probably the biggest compliment I can give it. Then there's Leyndell. Walking into the capital for the first time is one of those moments that reminds you just how massive Elden Ring really is. After hearing about the city for dozens of hours, you finally arrive, and somehow it still feels bigger than you imagined. The streets branch off in every direction. There are rooftops you can climb, hidden paths tucked behind buildings, and enough optional areas that it's easy to spend hours exploring before you even think about progressing the main story. What I love most about Leyndell is that it actually feels like the center of the world. A lot of games build giant capital cities that end up feeling more like oversized villages, but Leyndell generally feels important. You can see the history of the world and its architecture, and every part of the city reinforces the idea that this was once the heart of the Empire. It's one of From Software's best locations, not just in Elden Ring, but across all of their games. If there's one location I think deserves way more attention than it gets, it's Nokstella. Every single time I go through it, I'm reminded of how incredible it looks. The glowing blue architecture, the waterfalls, the reflections across the water, the stars hanging above the city. It almost feels like you're exploring somewhere that doesn't belong to the same game. The only problem is over almost as quickly as it begins. Most players are in and out before they really have the time to appreciate it. And because it's tucked away underground, it's easy for it to get overshadowed by all the bigger legacy dungeons. I honestly think that if Nokstella had been twice the size, with a few more major encounters, people would be talking about it the same way they talk about Stormveil or Leyndell. Instead, it ends up being one of Elden Ring's most beautiful locations that's remembered mostly as a stop on Ranni's questline. And that's my ranking. I'm sure a lot of you are going to disagree with at least one of these, and honestly, that's part of what makes Elden Ring so good. Everyone has a one area they love, but someone else can't stand. So let me know how you rank them. I'm curious to see what your list looks like, and whether there's a location you think are completely underrated. If enough people want to see it, I might rank every boss next, or maybe every weapon. Thank you all for watching.